When you first hear the word Serbia, there's a variety of different things people think of. Serbia's flag that looks so similar to Russia, Serbia when they were part of the USSR, and even more recently, Serbia's tainted history in the early 1990s and 2000s when they were part of Yugoslavia. Although Serbia's history is a complicated one, I will attempt to explain a moment in Serbia's history where they had a huge cultural shift from their old medieval era to their modern one, for which my ancestors lived. Now let me start with a prelude to the Uprising, and to set the scene. The end of the 18th century, and subsequent beginning of the 19th century, showed a very reminiscent pattern of revolution that was also seen during the American Revolution not 30 years earlier. The Turkish Ottoman elites, whom had occupied Serbian lands for centuries at this point, the laws and taxes against the native Serb population forced able men into the Ottoman Empire army. Brutal oppression from the Ottomans made the local populations cower. All of this oppression has been going on for years at this point, and there had begun to have a turning point in history. This is where I introduce the main opposition, the Dahis, an elite group of mercenaries from the Ottoman Empire. When the Dahis entered Serbia in the early 1800s, they came for one reason only, for complete control. The Dahis marched onto the city of Belgrade, where on September 15th, 1801, they assassinate the leader of Belgrade, Mustafa, who was also considered a friend of the Serbs. Mustafa's death was a tragedy, and only made a revolt more likely. As for 2 years later, in 1804, the Dahis murdered a group of Serbian leaders, as another effort to shut down any rebellion. This task was named the Slaughter of the Knies. Knies named because of the Serbian ethnic group. Because of this, a poet by the name of Filip Vesnich had a vision that he documents in his poem, The Beginning of the Revolt Against the Dahis, written in 1815, that had the sky had rare natural phenomenon, he states. Solar eclipses, comets, and lunar eclipses, all signs which indicate the start of the revolt against the Turks, in which will be run by ordinary people. And so, the battle rages higher. The Serbs now have more cause than ever to revolt. After the slaughter of the Knies, many of the Serbian leaders were killed, and so the remaining people able unanimously voted for a man named Karađorđe Petrović, a man with much experience in war, where in 1798 Petrović fought against Napoleon's army in Egypt. With Petrović leading, they had a slight advantage, and with many victories, where they pushed back the Dahi forces, and backed by other Ottomans, they captured much of Serbia, and only had Dahi-controlled Belgrade to conquer. After they won many battles, they began to set their eyes on the capital Belgrade, and that's where they fought a very decisive battle against the Dahi's control over their capital, called the Battle of Misar, in which they finally took back Belgrade. However, because of such a decisive battle against the battle with the Serbs, believed they deserved to break away from the Ottoman Empire and become their own independent state. The message that Serbia wanted to become completely independent did not sit well with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. This is where the uprising began to crumble, and the Ottomans removed their support, and what was once a fight against some mercenary Dahis became a war against the Ottoman Empire, still in its golden years. The end begun to be heard as in 1813, 7 years after the Serbs' great victory in Belgrade, the Ottomans pulled force to crush it, once and for all. ending the revolt and leaving many to go back to what was once under Ottoman control. However, it did forever change the course of the Serbian people. Many people eventually gave their testimonies after the revolt. The revolt made many people give emotional reactions to the arrival of the Dachis. A contemporary, historian Lazar Arsenovic, said in his 1898 historical account, Istorija Srpska Usanka, they demanded obedience, not with law, but with the sword, sharing their brutality in occupying Serbia. He then goes on with, fear spreads faster than fire, and even the bravest men whispered in corners. Thank you very much.